Dzień dobry Państwu.
Good afternoon. My name is Łukasz Malina. I'm Vice President of WEBCON. And I have this honorable function of introducing a company that we have worked with for 10 years, I guess. And one might say that, to speak in the language of Arbut, our marriage is 10 years old, which is what? Silver anniversary, as they call it? Piotr Chrobot is the vice president of the board of Südzucker, and he is going to talk about the attitude to running projects. At Südzucker, he is responsible for finance, and he is responsible for 5 other departments, and he is also responsible for IT. So Südzucker was one, maybe not of the first, but one of the first companies where we introduced WEBCON BPS. At that time, WEBCON BPS was quite a new product, and the client knew about it. I hope they were ready to understand that they will have their say and contribution as to how WEBCON BPS will look like. At that time, it was not that obvious, but especially the initial period was very important, and Südzucker influenced a lot the elements that were subsequently added or removed from the product. And we spoke with Südzucker about the implementation, and we had one important thing from them, that we have a similar DNA. That is to say, we like optimizing our business processes, and what is most important, we like standardizing them, because as we look at our clients, Südzucker is an example of a company that is doing their best on standardizing the processes to making them standard, and our poor guys, implementation guys, had to read so much before the implementation. There was so much documentation on how the user interface should look like, or for instance, how the SharePoint look like, where the report should be, which of them hidden, which of them visible, and so on and so forth. That is the lesson that we still remember. But we're happy to have done all that, and I think we have implemented several dozens of projects together with Südzucker Polska, and we started here on site with a Polish company, but now we are implementing and launching processes beyond the Polish company, and we're absolutely proud of that, because we see that the parent company has acknowledged us, and Piotr will speak then Magda. So, Piotr, over to you, and have a good day. Thank you. It's always like that as I prepare for the presentation, and I think what to say in the beginning, and then whoever introduces me always steals away the show. And the colleagues from WEBCON has asked me to talk about our IT department, because they say that our IT department at times is better than other IT departments. So I'm going to talk as a member of the board. I'm responsible primarily for finance, but I love IT, and I'm always interested in what works and what doesn't. And many things are actually implementable. Now, the first thing as you enter our IT department, this is the thing that you see as you enter a department. It's not about darts, but it's those are the victims of our judgment. Those are the ladies who are freshly employed at our department, and then they're forced to bake cookies. Such is the tradition, and there is one person still resisting, but that person had her printer not operational, and finally she baked the cookies. But the question is, how is it possible, you may say, and why is it? And it is possible because whenever we research which department is best perceived in our company, which department is most effective, then the IT department always wins the prize. It's not the marketing people, it's not the purchasing, it's not financial department, it's IT guys, regardless of their regular extortion of different cookies. How is that possible? Well, let's talk about it. And by the way, if you just heard that, those texts, oh, Johnny, Bobby, Billy, and so on and so forth, it makes you sick, like my little sweet Peter. How about your decision? You need to be an IT guy to hear all that immediately after you make someone's printer or monitor work. Anyway, everything begins with a simple but principal question. Usually we don't have time for that. So the question is, how are we going to develop an architecture, the architecture? And just like Varbot, we used to have a larger autonomy. Our systems were much more autonomous. And we wanted to simplify architecture as much as it was possible. We have an ERP, and only those who have to have access to ERP should have it, which is primarily accountants. Although I would actually alleviate the accountants from ERP because people use SAP, therefore ERP is not worthy of touching it. And all those members of the staff who are not related to accounting should have two environments. That is the data warehouse, that is information, that is the data warehouse is for controlling finance and accounting, and all other people work with WEBCON BPS, which is the workflow. And so the first question is crucial. And we have to get rid of redundancies. If we don't do it, we won't have time to develop, which is more difficult to do in companies, in companies who have either inefficient IT or have long-standing IT departments, because they have many different autonomous systems. For instance, this is HR people who need to approve something, and here we have a revision that identifies a critical system, and their IT landscape looks like men's legs who were standing in a bog for half an hour, and he is being sucked by all sorts of water animals, and everyone is demanding something and sucking the blood out of the veins. But we need to have a simple landscape, simple IT landscape, and BPS is the best tool for that. There is no time for anything else. IT are not firemen to rush around and extinguish fires. IT there to develop the company. And by this I could conclude, because that is the most important slide. I simply want you to remember that. And we have to think, we have to rethink, and to think whether all we have in our companies is indeed necessary. Next thing, systems that we offer, they need to be simple and even invisible for users. For instance, how about USB sticks? We know that this is a dangerous thing, because such a USB stick is you can buy a rubber duck and it becomes a keyboard, and you open you simply get into the system and get the payload, and there is no yellow duck that would warn you, and you can actually damage the working station. So what companies do, they block USB ports, or they enforce coding, or do nothing. And we, right at the very beginning, were against blocking USB ports. We had a few examples of forcing the coding, but then there is this guy who goes to a presentation, tries to remember the passwords for the USB sticks. And today we do not have security systems. It's not to say that there is no risk, but we simply believe that users do not deserve ill treatment. We simply train them on security matters. That's awareness training, and maybe I will regret next week what I have said, but we do not believe that a user should fall a victim to a security need. What else? Once we had upgraded SharePoint up to version 10, and we couldn't sleep, and IT director took a decision to standardize all processes and procedures, and this is how we work, and all companies that cooperate with us have also to comply with those standards. But we many times implement a lot and quickly, and for instance, how about our IT mobile telephony providers? We have changed 3 companies already. Our parent company goes mad about it, but our vendors are used to it, that they should act real fast, and they should deliver SIM cards the next day. The day after that, everything should be up and running. If they don't, then we change the vendor. And for instance, once Skype for Business was introduced, no telephones on desks on Friday. On Friday, people leave home and they have old fixed line telephones. On Monday, they come back to work and there are no telephones on desks. Skype is everywhere. So we're real fast. And that is the key as well. Now, let's move on. Standardization of the user's interface. We want every application to look just the same. That is the fleet system, and our users confirm the cost of refueling, and they they receive alerts about maintenance checks, or they can report a damage. Anyone who uses these applications sees the same layout, the same colors, the same buttons. And we have so many applications in our company, but we have cars, telephones, formal approvals, bookings, auctions, calendar of events, questions to the management board. You can use BPS to do that. Finance, HR, quality. All of those systems are more or less developed, and they cover the entire landscape of the activities of the company. And no one asks what to do. Everyone uses those systems. And once we have such well-trained users and IT department, then there is no need to have a user manual. There is no such need, because every member of the staff works with e-banking systems. They manage their assets, they do some complicated operations, and they would not read the manual because they don't have it. And there is no manual to Facebook, after all, is there? So if a user knows the process, needs a manual to use the system, it means that that system is ill-designed for that user. And this is how we act, that whoever starts working with the application says, aha, got it, and keeps on going. Now, let's talk about IT staff. Generally speaking, we prefer, and whenever we enroll people, we prefer the willingness to work. The will to work is more important than the skills, and the skills shall appear. But it doesn't actually matter how skillful the guy is. He's got to want. If he or she doesn't want, skills won't help. There are so many IT guys in the room. Raise your hand if you have never increased the workload that you had to do. Somehow it is with IT guys, right? It's us. You have to play a game, card game from time to time. Sometimes IT guys, they say that for 3 weeks they were implementing a GSM gate. And I thought, guys, come on, be decent. Well, the problem is that no one can verify that. You just play around your working time. And if you do not have a team of engaged people, then you keep on implementing tools, and it costs money. And once people are engaged, they do what they're supposed to do. Right, from time to time, they have a cookie and have a cup of coffee. Sometimes they need to play a game, fine. And we have a guy who is actually a musician. He plays one of those dental instruments, but we want him in the team, and he will become. He plays one of those brass instruments, but we are going to train him, and he will become an ID man. And it cannot be that people it cannot be that other members of the staff are dissatisfied with IT. IT can make exceptions, and there are some situations. For instance, generally the standard is that everyone should have a Samsung A-class telephone. However, directors may write an email to the board and ask for the S telephone. And in 100% of cases, the management board says, yes, sure, you will have one. However, there are people who don't care, so they don't write emails, and this is how we save money. But once they get an S telephone, then they're very, very grateful. We did nothing, but all of a sudden, everyone is so grateful. And then they go to the IT director and say, Marek, so thank you so much. You upgraded my telephone. Those are small things, but those small things generate trust to IT department, and everything works better. You might think, no, it's like a vegetable store, it's a grocery store where people work like that. Well, We have more than 500 people, 4 factories. We have 1 billion of turnover. It's a part of an international corporation. It's the largest producer of sugar all over the world, and we sell 20 to 25% of Polish sugar. But still, we have normal, humane relations between business and the staff that works at the IT department. And an example. What can we do with all that stuff? So last month, a parent company at a weekly meeting reported to the IT director that they had an idea.
They would like to implement or roll out a tool. So consider that. We'll get back in touch in 7 days. We'll have another conversation. What happens after 5 working days? We present the following thing to them. Let me illustrate it to you. Basically, we created a prototype, and there it is. You can use it. Wouldn't have been possible if IT never did infrastructure stuff. Wouldn't be possible if we didn't have geeks. And it wouldn't be possible if we didn't have a platform where those things work. And there's silence on the line, and this is a basic quite an achievement, because the team thought that there would be an analysis, a tool would be selected, and then it would be authorized, and then they would try to develop it and roll out. So hopefully before Christmas 2020 it will be done. And the guys from Poland, they say, there it is, we've got a prototype for you, and it's available in 3 language versions. And that makes us feel good. And WEBCON BPS is the approved workflow platform in our company. Nothing can stop us because we can cannibalize all the other systems. And I want to get rid of all these leeches, because all these things cost money, because you have to maintain it and pay license fees. And this is our landscape today. A few words about the users now and how we approach system deployment. It's about invoice flow. We never prepared a system that we present to the employees. There it is, a great tool that you need to use as of now. Rather than that, we started with an awareness-raising campaign. You can see it was a while ago. To the left-hand side, you've got a member of the board responsible for the finances, the middle IT guy. On the right-hand side, the treasury guy. And here we are explaining why it is necessary in our company to move to digital. Now you will be able to choose an account, and it will make us a modern company, and the deployment, the implementation was a success. Now I look at how complex it was. The guy who came up with that should burn in hell. And I'm not saying it only because I came up with that. So we moved paper to digital without even stopping for a second to consider why and how. Today it would be different. So an employee comes over and they say, I need a tool. Usually it happens once they are back from the conference, and it's good that they are there. They got a bag, and there is a mug in this bag, and they want to implement a new system. All great and very well, why not? So we tell them, listen, my sweet summer child, stop for a moment. What's your need? What's the task that you need to do? Let's talk about that, because probably we'll do it in GPS, and only if it's impossible can we help you as an IT department to do something about that. And usually we say, okay, we can code it, or rather we can put it together, and then we can work with that. So how do we teach them? They need to remember that IT has its own schedule. They cannot just tell us, I need it, right now, and they will use their manager to leverage our manager. No, they all need to negotiate with IT department when it comes to work schedule. And it's always to start right now. The users own the system, they should test the system. We start with little things, then we add new steps. How come it's even possible? Because for years now, we've been winning people's trust. Imagine you have this process that you define the needs, then you authorize it, and then you've got the implementation gap, and then it's stuck for half a year, nothing can be done. Then users will simply sit and come up with new functionalities. On the other hand, they can roughly describe what they need, will do the first edition, and then after a year, they've got the 17th iteration. They're not afraid to come up with stuff. And they are ready to take on board the first simple version, Pareto. We try to be critical. Ultimately, it turns out that business won't need it. If there is too much coding, maybe we're doing something wrong. And ultimately, the end user is more important than the business needs. I got this system recently for investment planning. These people have to fill in 100 fields, and each with a list. Oh, I feel so sorry for these people, because you cannot do that to people. End users are very important. We need to count the number of clicks they have to do. You need to keep their needs in mind. If you don't, if there is too much stuff to be done, you have to redo things. And we look up at the best ones. Android, you know what icons look like there, and there is no reason why our application shouldn't be also efficient. We count clicks. The IT had said 2 clicks max, and that's it, and ultimately it was doable. We look for the best ways of doing things. BPS, exceptionally, if we can't, we look for other ways. The implementation team is quite well trained, so we can suggest things. Have you considered this or that? You could have such an indicator, such a control light, and maybe data should actually suggest things. But, you know, after all, 9 cases out of 10 is the same. And little changes. You know, I call, and it's there. They installed Studio on my computer, and I have to do it myself. And I had to correct things by myself, the little ones. You know, when I hear about those long deployments, well, with us, something needs to be done, it's done. Corrections are introduced. Now, we have this system that allows us to manage via goals, and here we use the IT systems for business remuneration. So we need to implement this fleet management system. Go there to the IT director and discuss a time slot. And once you've consulted them, you will see where you're standing. No exceptions, or rather, no excuses. We don't like excuses. System needs to work. And thus, it's business that is the face of a solution. And IT can deliver on time in 10 cases out of 10. And the last thing, I've been asked to tell you about how I see the role of the board. SAP implemented in the whole organization internationally. We had this well working. It was a rollover rather than a rollout. So everything that we had worked out before, got crashed. Most people will simply, you know, cross their arms and they say, I love the stuff that I've worked out, and now I'm going to show you what it means to have an Italian strike action. And usually the IT tells you it looks bad. Our users are not following the schedule, not implementing the agenda. We met the heads of the departments and the plans, and they were not happy. Tell us the critical task for them from the point of view of their own continuity, of their processes. And then the head of the plant sees that they need to have a functional SAP as of the 1st of January next year, because otherwise they won't be able to invoice staff. So we asked them about the priorities, and then suddenly they say SAP is the priority for this year. Suddenly, by themselves, they leave the room, and suddenly the deployment just moves ahead. Because then they are the only company within the group to deploy SAP on time. And that's the role of the board. So that's how you convince business to take responsibility. That's it from me. Thank you so very much. Hello, my name is Magda Furman. I work for WEBCON. And I will summarize Piotr's presentation. I work for the deployment department. I will tell you a few words about how international clients use WEBCON BPS. First, the architecture and how WEBCON BPS can be deployed in international corporations. Then, about standard functionalities of the system that make it possible for us to have such deployments. So what's the first solution chosen by the clients often when they have many companies? It is something that cuts across the whole organization, and thus users have one single website, and all of the apps made available to all companies or to some companies are simply available to them. That's in this one location. The configuration is one and shared by the companies. Then, if you want to deploy something in another company, it goes fast. And thus, you need processes to be standardized across the group. And another approach that is used is how the apps are grouped together. So you prepare dedicated installations per region or country or company, depending on how an organization is divided. And that gives you an opportunity to build regional teams of competence that can deploy applications independently of one another, depending on what is needed in a country or a region. To exchange such applications, for the teams to share such solutions, what we recommend always is to keep one common version. So you need to upgrade the system in one environment, but as a result, the same is going to happen in other environments, and thus you can exchange apps, share them between different teams. And there is also another way to group apps, but that happens at the level of a database. Imagine you have just one system installation. When you do that, users will continue to have one single website, one single interface that they have access to. When you have different databases, though, you get other benefits in terms of efficiency and data security. Imagine you have apps that are vital, that contain confidential, sensitive information, for example, HR apps. You can have these in a separate database, and you can have a separate group of admins that have access to them, and this can be a select, small group of people. You have also core apps that are going to be developed in the future, major important applications, company-wide. Then, if you take them out to a single database, it will have a positive impact on the efficiency. Now I will cover a few standard functionalities of the system that make it possible to deploy in international environment. The first flagship or standard thing that's been since the very beginning are companies. So you can divide rights to administration, to manage, to read, but these companies basically allow us to divide tasks in a flexible manner at every single step. So you get roles for every single company, and with new status you can centralize these tasks. Companies, it's not only about what you're authorized to do, it's also about your approach to data sources. You have companies configured in the system, and you can prepare data sources that are dedicated to single companies, and that works when you have different ERP systems in different companies. And we have one BPS, business process, that could integrate with all of these. So it doesn't matter whether it's SQL, Oracle, or web service that is used to make data available. And another key functionality is multi-language versions. There are 3 levels to it. First, you have this multi-language portal or a website. Secondly, you have translations of the things that we configure. Thirdly, what you have are the translations of dictionary values. Now, the website translation, standard phrases that are used throughout. By default, you have these languages available that have been listed here. Also, you have a special website for translation, or make it available to our partners and clients. There you can define your own language packages or introduce changes to the existing packages. The second element, translating the elements that you configure. By that I mean the translation of those basic building blocks, so attributes and paths, but also other attributes that are not visible at first sight, co-validation, templates, and validation that can be prepared for you in a number of languages. The last bit when it comes to translation, it's a new thing actually. It's going to be available in this new version, multi-language data sources. We could prepare such a source. What you're going to get is values for the user will change dynamically depending on the language selected in the website. It's not just about the form. You have this attribute, wherever it's used, the language version will change. So you can use this attribute in email messages or other locations, and in all those places you will have a given language version. And another new thing, you can export process as a template. So you export a process as a template, and then when you import it onto an environment, you will get a new definition of this process, irrespectively of whether this process was configured in a given environment or not, whether it existed there or not. And you can also use that in international corporations. Imagine you have one environment in common for all the branches. You have one business process that we know it for a fact will be different depending on a company, so significantly that we don't want to create one BPS system that will service all those cases. So what happens now is you prepare a single template, a starting point that is going to service a share of cases, and you implement that business process in a new company, and then you can re-import this template. You can prepare then a database that a given branch or company can use and adapt this process to their own needs. Thank you so very much for your attention.